Diether Gehrmann. Okay. Diether Gehrmann, who has done a lot of organizing the other folks who are going to introduce and speak a little bit today. And that will also include Axel Gehrmann and Elaine. Let me check your, yes, you go by Gehrmann too, Elaine, Axel's wife. And last but not least, oh, I think I saw you, Lucy. I saw Lucy. Oh, there you are. Oh, you're right up at the top for me. Okay. Yeah, Lucy Meyer from the Netherlands. Yeah, very, very happy to see you, Lucy. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I will just ask Diether to start.
Okay.
Because she knows the most about this subject of Diether Gehrmann.
Theoretically, I should know it all by heart, but I'm afraid that I stutter. So I wrote it down, even though it's part of my life too. So excuse me if I read. And I just want to give a short chronological biography of Diether's life. To show that his international and his interreligious outreach and passion, which culminated in almost 20 years of full-time interreligious service to the IARF, he actually began very early. And when he died in the year 2006, at the age of 77, he had also been my husband for 50 years and the father of our 4 sons, who are practicing their own experiment in international living by now: Ronald, Rainer, Derek, and Axel. So Diether Gehrmann was born in 1929 in Munich, and he grew up in a minister's household, his father serving liberal congregations first in Munich and then in Offenbach near Frankfurt. Half of Diether's childhood and youth was overshadowed by World War II. He was a 16-year-old schoolboy when the war ended in 1945. Everything was in shambles, literally and figuratively speaking. But the young people in Germany were ready to start a new life. They were desperate to reconnect with the world and with the people from whom they had been cut off in Nazi Germany. Diether Gehrmann right away started the youth group in the Offenbach church again, and he helped to reorganize the free religious youth nationally in Germany and became their international secretary right away. They tried to revive some pre-war international contacts to the IARF, that's the International Religious Fellowship, which was sort of the youth organization parallel to the IARF on the adult level. This new beginning was not easy, but in 1950, the Offenbach Youth Group was able, by bicycle, to undertake their first group visit across the German border. They went to Holland, to the Netherlands. And Diether managed to organize a similar bicycle expedition in the following year, now all the way to England. From then on, the international annual summer conferences of the IARF, bringing together liberal youth from European countries as well as from America, became the most important part and focus of Diether's youth work. And after numerous preparatory visits and consultations, IARF formally accepted the German Free Religious Youth into membership in 1952. Diether is 24 years old when in 1953, the next big international event is put into action, namely a large American youth delegation from the AUA, namely the American Unitarian Association at that time, with their leader, the Reverend Sam Wright. They come for a homestay visit to the Free Religious Congregation in Offenbach before going on to the Netherlands for that year's summer IARF conference. Many good friendships were formed that summer. And it was, by the way, also my first attendance of an IARF conference. I came from Stuttgart and their Free Religious Youth group there. Besides all these exciting international activities, which were absorbing more and more of Diether Gehrmann's time and energy, he was also studying philosophy and education at Frankfurt University. It was more or less expected that he should succeed his father someday, but there was and is no good way to study for the liberal ministry in Germany. Fortunately, around this time, Professor James Luther Adams from America and from the AUA paid a friendly visit to the Freireligiöse Gemeinde and the Gehrmanns in Offenbach, and he suggested Diether Gehrmann should apply for a scholarship at Mid-Willamette Unitarian Seminary at the University of Chicago. This was, of course, a big adventure, but it was carried through and was successful. And in 1954 to 1955, at age 25, Diether went to Chicago for a year. And after that scholarship year, he decided it would be good to have a full course of studies for a degree in the liberal minister, and he went on to start King in California. Meanwhile, back in Germany in 1956, we got busy organizing an IARF youth conference in Offenbach, and Diether came for the summer to help. I was also there on the local committee to help. And we had a good summer conference, and last not least, it was during this conference and summer that we decided to get married. The wedding took place in December of 56 at the Star King Chapel. In 1957, Diether Gehrmann graduated from Star King, was ordained in San Francisco UU Church. We returned to Europe, and he began his service as minister in the Free Religious Congregation in Offenbach. But of course, his international work was continued and intensified, now on an adult level. And when in 58, the IARF held their big World Congress in Chicago, Offenbach, with a group of German free religious societies, were admitted into full membership of IARF, and Diether's father, the Reverend Max Gehrmann, was in attendance at the Congress in Chicago. From our place of life and work at that time in Offenbach and Frankfurt, we participated from then on in the next IARF Congresses, of course. That was 61 in Davos in Switzerland, 64 in The Hague in Holland, and Diether Gehrmann was actively engaged in the proceedings already. 1966 came a new level of international living for us, namely a pulpit exchange with a UU church in Philadelphia. And the following year, Diether was called as the minister of the UU Society of Rockland County, New York, where we spent the next 5 years with our growing young family. During this time, Diether is just 40 years old now. In 1969, the IARF Congress is held in Boston, USA. There, Diether gets appointed as the UUA representative on the IARF International Council. Dana McLean Greeley becomes IARF president, and he has ambitious plans for the IARF. He is looking for a full-time paid staff. And amazingly, in 1972, at the IARF Congress in Heidelberg, this plan goes into action, and Diether is called to be the first full-time IARF General Secretary. In his speech, President Dana Greeley said, and I quote, "What we need is someone who thinks, feels, lives, dreams IARF unconditionally." End of quote. And let me finish with this by saying, yes, I think this is exactly what he and what the IAF got in Diether Gehrmann. And now we will hear from Lucy Mayer, who was an important part in building up the IAF Secretariat in Frankfurt. So this is my part. There comes Lucy.
Yes, thank you.
We don't hear you. We don't hear you. You are muted. You are muted.
Right. Diether Gehrmann, being the General Secretary of IAF, served the association from 1972 to 1990. As such, I worked with him as my boss from 1979 to 1990. In those years, the team at the IAF Secretariat in Frankfurt grew to be 5 staff members. Those of you who have known Diether will remember him as a human dynamo that he was. Outgoing, enthusiastic, someone who gets things done. During his leadership, the number of member groups in IARF grew from 35 to 54, adding new faith traditions to the dialogue. The approach was to engage in a process from encounter and dialogue to mutual support and joint action. I consider myself fortunate to have been his assistant for the social service network. All in all, some 100 charitable projects were implemented by supporting our members in Eastern Europe, India, Bangladesh, and the Philippines. Diether was also a friend for many of us all over the world. He touched the life of people. By his own example, he inspired others to become involved in the work of IARF. He also believed in the role of young people. He made sure there was always a youth representative on the council, and I was one of them. Together, we launched the IARF youth programs. The Youth Encounter and Work Camp in the Philippines in 1985 was the first ever IARF event in that country. Diether has initiated many firsts. I will name just a few. 1973, first IARF conference ever in Africa was held in Lagos, Nigeria. 1976, first event ever in Japan was the East-West Encounter visiting the Japanese member groups. 1978, first woman to be IARF president, and that was Dr. Carolyn Howlett from USA. 1981, first Asian to be IARF president, that was Nikyo Niwano of the Buddhist lay movement Rishoko Sakai. 2 more. 1984, first IARF conference ever in India, taking place in Calcutta. And last, 1987, first IARF Congress at the West Coast. And some of you may remember that took place at Stanford University. In 1990, at his farewell during the Congress in Hamburg, the association recognized Diether's tremendous contribution by honoring him with the IARF Leadership Award. The last years of his life, Diether spent at home in Frankfurt. His wife and loyal partner, Dorle, took loving care of him. Diether Gehrmann will long be remembered as a great advocate of interreligious cooperation for service and peace.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lucy. That was very enlightening and I think you will be remembered too for the great work that you did in the Secretariat.
Thank you.
And now
So, oh, okay, good.
Elaine will tell us something special, right?
Well, I don't know about that, but hello, everyone. I'll tell something a little more personal, I think, but also very much having to do with my involvement with the IARF. So in the summer of 1987, I had just finished my first year of my Master of Divinity program at Stark King School for the Ministry in Berkeley. And there was a request for Stark King students to serve as interns for the IARF World Congress that summer, 1987, which was, as we all know, was held at Stanford University in Palo Alto. So I joined 5 other students, Roy Reynolds, Leslie Hybor, David Pilger, Margot Gross, and Sam Trumbore, who maybe some of you know was just elected to the UUA board in June. So anyway, the 6 of us were the Stark King student interns at the IARF Congress. And we spent a little more than 2 weeks working closely with the IARF staff and other religious leaders to help put on this 26th IARF World Congress. So it was there that I first met Diether and Diether Gehrmann, Lucy Meyer, Irmtrud Schmalenbach, and Klaus and Antje Glindemann, and had a great time. So 2 weeks later, that same summer, 1987, after the Congress, as the Stark King school year started up again, I met Axel Gehrmann in the Stark King kitchen. He was a fellow Stark King student, but he had taken the previous year off and had gone back to Germany for the year, so I hadn't met him yet. And I excitedly told him I had just spent a great 2 weeks with his parents at the Congress. He was not terribly impressed, but thankfully I grew on him. So 2 years later, in 1989, I moved to Germany to live with Axel in Offenbach, right next to Frankfurt. And the IARF staff were busy gearing up for the upcoming Triennial World Congress to be held in Hamburg in 1990. Given that I had had experience with the 1987 Congress, and I was living very close to the IARF main office in Frankfurt, and living with the boss's son, I was hired to help with coordinating the US participants' correspondence for the upcoming Hamburg Congress and other miscellaneous tasks. It was a great year. I learned a lot about all the support and connections that the IARF provided to its international member organizations, and all the great hard work Lucy Meyer was doing to support so many groups. I was very impressed. So one memorable experience occurred in December of 1989. The IARF had long been supporting Unitarian congregations in Hungary and Romania, primarily by the coordinating the sending of various people sending coffee packages to Romania and Hungary, which was what they could sort of use as a type of currency, actually. And again, there was a very oppressive regime, and it was very hard to get any sort of resources or supplies to them. But anyway, and so the social service network really helped with that. And then, as I'm sure we all remember, in December of 1989, the Romanian Revolution occurred, and Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife were tried and executed in a matter of days. And the IARF quickly arranged to have a van full of supplies, and Klaus Glindemann and I drove first to Budapest in Hungary, and then to Kolozsvár in Romania with this van full of, we had a computer for the Unitarian headquarters in Kolozsvár, one of the early computers. And then we had some food and coffee. We had tons of paper and pencils, which none of the congregations had. I mean, the lack of any sort of supplies or resources was just mind-blowing. And I remember there were still bullet holes and blood stains on the buildings, sort of on the corners, and memorial flowers, where during the revolution, which was quick, but there was a fair amount of violence. Again, it really was very impressive. And I remember going into the stores, and I had been in stores in East Germany, actually, but there was nothing in the stores. There was no food. There were a few like rotten, there was no fruit. I mean, it was, anyway, I had never seen anything like it. So, and again, it was incredibly moving to visit a number of these Unitarian congregations in Transylvania. And church members turned out, they came through the mud, they came with wagons and horses. I mean, and they had so clearly suffered such deprivations, and that they came out to greet us. And again, it really was one of the most moving experiences I think I've ever had. And again, just to remember, this was several years before the Partner Church Council was formed, or any of all of the wonderful relationships and travels and all that network that's been built since then. This was really before that. And I was really impressed that the IRF had really served as one of the primary conduits under Diether's leadership, kind of between the UUA, the US UU congregations and those in Transylvania. So again, and then I did help prepare for and help carry out the 1990 World Congress in Hamburg, which was a big success. And I felt very grateful to be a part of that. And it was an honor to participate in what then was Diether's final Congress as a General Secretary. So
Thank you.
thank you.
And guess who's next?
I think that would be I. So this is Axel Gehrmann, and I'm the youngest of 4 sons of Diether and Dorla Gehrmann. And I just like to speak up on behalf of the sons of this generation, and just to share a few words, my perspective from where I was along the way. Everything Lucy and Dorla and Elaine said is very true and accurate. In 1972, when my father took on the role of executive director, and the headquarters were in The Hague, I remember well the family moving to Emmerich and my father taking the train from Emmerich on the German-Dutch border to The Hague those first few years, and us picking him up from the train station at the end of a workday. When the IARF Secretariat moved to Frankfurt in 1974, I was 11 years old. And I remember well my father going on trips around the world, meeting new religious liberals to become member group participants from India and Japan and the Philippines. And I remember my father coming back from these travels with wonderful stories to tell of adventures and gifts. Mind-boggling, very impressive. And then in the late 1970s, I became involved in the IRF as well. And I attended congresses in Holland, and yes, went on to theological school at Star King myself. And yes, recalling these experiences from my family, I then, during my sabbatical in 2004, visited Romania and India also, and established partner church relationships with congregations there, linking them with the UU congregation in Illinois I was serving at the time. And yes, so IARF spirit of Diether Gehrmann remains vibrant in the family, and it's wonderful to be here with you now, calling in from Monterey, California, where Elaine and I serve as co-ministers of the UU congregation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So glad you were close, Axel and Elaine. And thank you all for speaking. This was very enlightening, but I am pretty sure others will have questions and comments, remembrances likely. So I think first Julia is going to show a few photos while you are, deciding whether you want to ask a question or not. And let's see, if you do want to, it'll probably get a little more informal as we go along. But right now, maybe if you would, if you know how to raise your hand here, then I will look at those first. Raise your hand on Zoom to technologically, yeah. Aha. So in this photo, we see not only Diether, but Lucy, and I think that's Elaine. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, right. The names are here. Yes. Yes. And Klaus Gundemann, who's been spoken of. Yeah. Thank you. Next one.
Okay.
About what age was he there?
That's about 1970, I think, which would make him, yeah, 40, 41.
Aha. And oops, okay. Oh, and there's the whole progression, huh?
A whole yeah, gallery which Derek put together yesterday.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
from young to old.
Right.
Okay, and that was an interesting picture. I think it was taken at the first Congress which Diether had to organize after he was full-time, and that was in Montreal. And he is sort of sitting at the feet of his council members. So
Ah,
from the left, that's John Kilty of United Kingdom, and then Dana Greeley, Peter Dalbert from Switzerland, what's his name again? Oh my goodness, he's an American next. And then comes Arnie Kubler, who was working at the AUA in Boston, and Bishop Kovac of Romania. And who was the, oh my goodness, maybe some.
Malcolm Sutherland.
No. No, he was somebody from, not from the AUA. He came from Washington, and he had something to do with the with government rather than with the Unitarians.
Okay.
interesting.
Maybe I'll think of
So-
it.
This is a wonderful photograph to have, and having served on the council in the previous term, I will say that the council looks very different now, with many women on it and people from all over the world. But this is the group that got us here, I guess.
Sort of.
Yeah. Okay. So I am not seeing the hand raised thing. Maybe I'm missing it here. So just how about if someone jumps in with a question or remembrance that you have from that era?
I think John Young is raising his hand.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you, John.
That's true. I was a young minister involved with the American chapter of IARF in the early and middle 70s, and then the late 70s, early 80s as the president. And Diether contacted me in 73 or early 74 and asked me, since my wife at that time was an Indian woman from Mumbai, and he knew that I visited periodically in the summer, whether I would go around India and visit the different Indian groups and see whether they might be willing to host a conference. So I did make a trip all around India, which was very interesting. Spent time with the Khasi Hill Unitarians. When I got to the place that I reached by plane there, I was met by the Indian version of the CIA who tried to turn me back as a spy, but I convinced them that I was a clergyman and was not a missionary and would just be working with people that were already of my fellow faith. Had a wonderful time in Calcutta during the visit there at with the Brahma Samaj and also with the Ramakrishna Mission and others, and around the country. Had a wonderful time, but reported back to Diether that none of the groups were really prepared. And so then I think really Diether and I hatched the idea of a study tour. And at the cusp of 76, 77, there was a group of 70-some Americans, Canadians, Germans, Dutch, I think a French person or two, And so it was a very international group. And we eventually met in Mumbai, then Bombay, of course, and started there and traveled around India as a group, which was quite challenging for Diether and I several times because the planes were small. And so, and the Indian way of doing airplanes at that point is if you were a big wheel in a business or a politician, you could displace other passengers. And so I think at least twice, Diether and I had to jump on a plane different from all the other IARF people. And because of my previous contacts and my mother-in-law's political standing in Bombay, we were able to arrange direct meeting with Morarji Desai, who was the prime minister in New Delhi. And so I think we were really the probably only religious denomination in the world that had I think over a half-hour meeting with the prime minister alone, of course, with some of his staff. So that was very interesting. And it was, I think, a wonderful conference all around. And then also I worked with Diether on a number of the UUA General Assemblies with the IARF events when some of the people that we saw in the photos were still very much involved with the IARF. We had a lot of leading lights with us at those meetings. They were very well attended. There were a number of things that we held where there were 50, 60, 100 people, which was very good for the workshops and events at that point that weren't all assembly events. So I enjoyed very much working with Diether. As has been said, he was an extremely high energy person and could up on occasion be a little bit pushy, but he was a wonderful man and I enjoyed working with him. I'm glad to have an opportunity to share those memories from the distant past.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yes, Bill Schultz, please.
So first of all, it's wonderful to see so many old friends and to remember my old friend Diether. I want to say first, though, that Diether couldn't have built IARF alone, and Dorla and Lucy and all the rest of the staff and volunteers like Elaine played an enormous role in that, and they need to be remembered too. I just want to say two things about Diether. The description that Dorla read from Dana McLean Greeley could not have been more accurate. Diether lived and breathed IARF. He was incredibly passionate about it. And he and I had a few knockdown, drag-out fights over the years, mostly because Diether wanted about 90% of the UUA budget to go to the IARF, and he was always unhappy with me. Eugene knows this. He was always unhappy about something. But the wonderful thing about Diether was that once we'd had our combat, we would go back to Baldwinstrasse 74. Dorla would bring out the food and Diether would bring out black and white scotch. I remember that. It was black and white scotch every time. And we would have a magnificent evening in their home and we would become once again the best of friends. The other thing that I think we ought to remember, and Elaine reminded me of this by her reference to Romania, Diether was very, very sophisticated, strategic, and clever about how he related to Eastern Europe, which of course at the time was under great repression. And from the very first contact I had with him, which was an IARF trip that began in Prague after an IARF meeting in the Netherlands, I was enormously impressed by the sensitivity, the savvy, the political smarts that he exhibited in navigating the complexities of trying to be of support to the Eastern European Unitarian communities, while at the same time recognizing the limits and dangers involved in that. And I had enormous respect for him in that respect, as well as many others. So I think of him with great fondness. That's why I wanted to be on the call, and I'm delighted we can all commemorate him in this way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Let's see. Who else? Janice. So I think I've introduced all the other members of our smallish U.S. chapter board, and Janice wasn't here at the very minute. She came in about a minute after that. So Janice Marie Johnson from New York City.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I'm at JFK, so
Oh,
doing what I need to do.
yeah.
But what I wanted to ask Axel was what it's like to be the child of someone of such stature, someone who truly lives his values. So 4 sons, and I remember when we heard, well, you weren't all that impressed about that wonderful conference. How did you learn as a son to appreciate your father's commitment to community?
This was a question for me?
It was, yes.
Yes, it's a question for you. I hope
Well,
it's all right.
Well, how to appreciate our fathers, our mothers, our forebears, our ancestors, that for sure is an ongoing challenge. And I think it's safe to say that with every year I grow older and with every year I'm in the UU ministry, I have a deeper appreciation of, yes, my family heritage, my father's work, how he put it into action, and how I can take the wisdom and his good works and somehow find a way to apply it in my own life, which of course must needs be different, to find my own path while standing on the shoulders of those who went before. I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it.
And I speak out of the experience. My dad was one of those internationals, and for me, he was daddy. And yet, how to reconcile this great man in the world and my dad. So I so appreciate your response. It's something that we continue to work with across the generations. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I have a question, and this is for Lucy. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the Social Service Network did? Because the IARF no longer has that in officially. It's not an official part of what is going on under the council. And don't forget to unmute, Lucy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy to. Let me start with a group that is familiar to most American Unitarians. That is the Unitarian Union in the hills of Northeast India. They live at the foot of the Himalayas. And in those years, they said there is a lack of primary schools.
Mm-hmm.
So they opened up the churches during the week, their church buildings, for primary classes. And what IAF supported was the salary of the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've heard is that nowadays primary education is more widespread, even in remote areas. But in those years, it was very hard for little children who sometimes had to walk quite a distance to come to a school. So these local schools were very welcome. I must say that in those years, there was a fund of the UUA called the Haldane Fund for India. And IAF received a large sum per year to be spent in India. And I remember that the Kasi School Project was one of the recipients.
Mm-hmm.
So supported our member groups, it was not directly support to the group itself. Mostly it was through their efforts to do charitable work in their society, in their environment. Another good example is the Women's Literacy Project in Harinavi, which is just outside Kolkata. The then president, Punyabrata Roy Chowdhury, the first Indian to be IAF president, was very much involved in selecting a place where women could be trained to in literacy and setting up sewing classes. And a girl, Bubali Ganjuli, was hired to coordinate that project. And I remember that the women's organization, the IALRW, Liberal Religious Women, got very interested since it focused on women. And they also helped with financial and other efforts to make that project work. Then, as Elaine said, there was aid given to Eastern Europe. I remember, apart from the coffee, we had sent a printing press to Cluj because their old press wasn't working anymore and they very much needed duplication. Of course, in those days, you didn't have a computer, so you worked with stencil machines, and a printing press was even better. So that was Europe. In the Philippines, we supported among the Unitarians there, the UUCP, Unitarian Universalist Church of the Philippines, a project to start cooperatives among the local fishing and farmers. So again, it was through the Unitarians, through their network, but not just limited to the Unitarians. We involved Silliman University in Dumaguete on Negros Island. That's where the Unitarians live, to give them courses how to run a cooperative. So those are a few examples in various countries.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I went to the Khasi Hills after the Congress in India in 2010, and I met with some, the small group I was traveling with were hosted for tea with the group that supervises all the schools that they have opened. I think I remember that at that time they had opened 21 schools in that area of the Khasi Hills, not just for Unitarian children, but for any children. And we were there partly for the dedication of the second floor of a dormitory at the Unitarian High School in, oops, I shouldn't have.
Joai?
I think so, yes. Because those students came from far off and they couldn't just be day students. A number of them had to stay boarding. And the Holdeen Fund still exists as part of the UUA. And I'm not sure what kinds of projects they're doing in India right now, but I know they're still doing good work there. Dorla, would you like to speak? Thank you so much, Lucy. I see a hand raised. No.
Did I raise? Okay, I want to just greet some people. I'm very happy to see Yuji, in spite of the fact that it's probably a terrible time in Japan now. Do you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. I want to say that Diether always repeated that the high point of his career was the Congress in Tokyo in 1984. And I'm very, very glad that the Japanese chapter is so active now. And I think I heard informally that the Rishokosekai is willing to talk about the possibility of a next Congress in Japan. I hope you have heard about it.
That's questionable. Thank you very much for allowing me to attend this the great meeting. What you all said is a great history of IARF, and I think we should keep and save the what you said as an archive. Great archive of IARF should be saved, should be shared by many people, and should be handed down to the next generations. That's what I felt. I must say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is the 3:20 a.m., the August 8th in Japan time.
Yeah.
And so happy to see you, friends. So nice to see you. This is IARF.
Yes.
We have the relationship, it's lasting for many, many years. The organization's gone, but our friendship is lasting, forever.
Yeah.
And as you know that I am not the Rishokosekai member, I am the member of the Tsubaki Grand Shrine, a Shinto shrine. So this is the uniqueness which I am very proud of.
Yes.
I met the Dr. The Reverend Gehrmann, we call Gehrmann Sensei, for the first time in 1983. That was 1 year before the Tokyo Congress held in 1984. And he's a person I will never forget. The Gehrmann Sensei taught us the essence of the interface cooperation and the beauty of IARF. The key was in his teachings, encounter, dialogue, tolerance, spirituality, and radical openness. So I think the IARF's identity is to encounter with the people from different countries, different the cultures, different faith, to dialogue with them with tolerance. This is very important. The Gehrmann Sensei taught us that listen to them first, don't speak before them. That tolerance is very important. And then he said that we can cultivate our spirituality in this process. I'm sorry, I'm just reading my memo, because I'm speaking Japanese every day and I lost my fluency in English.
Doing very well.
Thank you. And thus, this process leads us to radical openness. This is another key word. In other words, the identity of IARF is to escape from dogmatism and to reach a state of constant openness to the truth, which I really believe is the same concept that can be applied to Shinto and Buddhism. I was also taught that inner peace, personal peace is important. And then outer peace, social peace or world peace will arise. That is what he told us during this 1984 and during the time that we have been seeing, the Gehrmann Sensei for many years. Dr. Gehrmann introduced the importance of an interface cooperation to the wide range of Japanese religions and taught us that Japanese religion can make suggestions to the world. The example, advocacy by the East and the response from the West. This is the main theme of the 1984 Tokyo Congress. as now that the interface cooperation have become the commonplace, the IRF's the presence has faded away. I'm sorry to say so. But therefore, I believe that the remembrance of the Gehrmann sensei will give us a great clue or hint to revitalize IRF. Thanks to the IRF activities, I think I must say that I was educated by IRF. So many things, by the IRF. And this is what I wanted to say. I'm sorry, I don't want to go on and on. I can read many pages, but this is the essence that I wanted to say to
Yes.
you all.
Thank you very much, Yuji-san.
Thank you very much.
Anne Greenwood.
Yeah.
I just want to say that when Darla said that 1984 was the height of Diether's expression of what he loved, well, that was the year that I became involved in IARF in 1984, and it changed my life. And it was my first international travel. And Lucy, you gave me a pair of potholders as a gift that I kept for hundreds, many, 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 many years. And they just finally wore out. But, I was a religious educator at the time. I have to say that if it hadn't been for Dick Bokey organizing our choir tour to Risha Kosakai and going all around the country, my life would have been very different. And what has evolved since then is 30 some odd years involved with the Partner Church movement. And you, Lucy and Diether, were such extreme examples of organization, as Yuji was saying, that just impressed me. So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah.
May
Yeah.
I?
Yes, Darla.
I am also glad to see Wolfgang Münch, whom I haven't seen for some time.
And then Bill.
I know that he did important work at some of the congresses. There used to be Congress declarations being formed after the discussions of the commissions and so on. And I'm pretty sure that he was very active in formulating at least one, if not more, of these Congress declarations. And I'm wondering if he would like to voice some remembrances, maybe. Please unmute yourself if possible.
I send all of you greetings from Lake Geneva on the French side. Thank you very much, Dorothy, for your good words. I don't think that my impact was really relevant in those years, but it was a good opportunity to develop drafting abilities, which has played a major role in my career, which followed after these IARF conferences. Now, listening to previous speakers, I thought, what is my memory of Diether Gehrmann? He was blessed with remarkable spiritual abilities, and at the same time also with managerial abilities. This is a combination which does not exist too often. Mm. And now I'm echoing what has been explained by Mr. Schulz. He also was blessed with a spouse who did really everything to support him in his mission and he was very capable collaborators. So in Diether Gehrmann's case, talents, also a good measure of ambition and good luck came together and made him finding an entry in the textbooks of history.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that Bill Schultz wanted to say something.
I just wanted to comment on Yuji's remarks. First of all, Yuji, thank you for that very eloquent summary of Diether's philosophy and contribution. I think you captured that very, very well. And your comments reminded me, you know, Diether could get very excited. And when he got excited, he would speak very, very quickly. And Yuji, of course, was the translator for Yamamoto Sensei. And I have a very distinct memory of Diether talking more and more quickly, faster and faster, and Yuji struggling to keep up the sweat coming off of his brow and finally saying, please, please, Diether Sensei, slower, slower. So we owe much of our international understanding, not just to Diether's philosophy, but to Yuji's qualities as a translator.
Right. Translators in general, yes.
Thank you, Bill. It was my headache. Yes, the Gehrmann sensei spoke so fast. He said da 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 da, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. So I was trying so hard to pick up the words, not whole sentence, but the key words. Keywords. And then yes, that was my yes. I almost got a heart attack because you know I was panicked to tell the truth, but I was managed to the translate for the Guji Yamamoto. Thank you very much, Bill-san. Because of you, IARF was so vitalized at that time. IARF was so glorious, shining during that time when Bill was the council member. Thank you, Bill. I missed that time, the golden time of the IARF.
Thanks. Well, we're coming fairly close to the end of our time, but I see Doris's hand, and maybe two others might be able to speak. Doris first, please. Unmute. Yeah.
Am I unmuted now?
You're good.
Yes.
It's very seldom that a minister is muted, right? But anyway, speaking about the role of a translator, which I think we all appreciated in IARF, I remember the time my husband was giving a sermon in Budapest, and the wonderful bishop was there translating. And Howard was going on and on and on, and the bishop would just go, blah, blah, blah. And finally at the end, Howard asked him how it went. He said, well, to tell you the truth, Reverend Hunter, they heard what they needed to hear. Meaning the translator always has the ability to let us know what we need to hear. Right, Yuji? But anyway, I have wonderful memories of Diether too, especially that first trip that we took to India that you mentioned, John, that was so much a part of your organization. And I remember on one occasion, the Germans were very good at getting the best table near Shillong when it was cold. And my daughter and I decided early in the morning that we'd grab that best table. And the German delegation came in and were very upset. And then Diether got very upset. And he got up on the table and he stomped his feet and he said, we all share. That is IARF's motto. We all share. And it was wonderful. That experience I'll never forget. And Dieter's loving kindness, you know, which was always very evident, was certainly part of it. So thank you all for, and I wish that the UUA would give more than 1% instead of 90%.
Right, right. That would be an improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh, thank you, Doris. Anyone else?
I just have one little
Okay.
comment because we couldn't think of the name of a person on that photograph. Okay, I have it. It was Percival Brundage, Bill. Percival Brundage. Does that mean something?
Brundage.
Okay.
Not to me.
Yeah, Percival Brundage was a Unitarian. He was head of the Olympic Committee of that era. He was very prominent.
Okay.
Oh.
Prominent something, yeah.
Well, I see that Janice has made it onto her airplane, and we have heard all kinds of wonderful vignettes about the IARF and tributes to Diether and also the IARF. And it's really been a very gratifying gathering for me and wonderful to see all the faces. And I'm just so very appreciative of everyone who came, and in particular, the Gehrmanns who spoke. And was there just one other, I think, or were there two? It's who didn't speak, but we were very happy to have you. And in particular to Dorothee, who she put the sequence of speakers together, and yeah, thank you. So may we meet again, and thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much, Gehrmann family. Yeah.
Thank you, Betsy.
And Lucy, yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful to see you. Yeah.
I also want to thank you and the US chapter, and also Julia, who is doing the technical.
Yes.
Yeah, we really need people like you.
And the original idea for this gathering was from John Young. When he found out that the Gehrmanns, the younger ones, were close to us in Monterey, he said, "Oh, we should have them talk about, well, themselves and about their father and the history." So thank you very much. Okay.
Good to see Doris.
Good to see you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Betsy. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for 3 in the morning.
Yes, thank you to the Japanese. It's very bright where you are, Yoshio. For 3 in the morning, it's very bright out.
I'm going to sleep.
Okay, good idea.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.